I never thought I'd be the guy to find out my wife was cheating on me, especially not with someone I once considered family. Her name's Lisa, and I've been with her for almost 6 years now. When we first got together, she seemed like the perfect partner, funny, smart, ambitious. But over the last few months, I started noticing small things that didn't add up. She'd be more secretive with her phone, brushing off my questions about where she was or who she was talking to. She'd get defensive if I tried to look over her shoulder or ask for her password. Honestly, I brushed it off at first, convincing myself I was just paranoid or imagining things. Then, last week, everything changed. I was coming home earlier than usual, had a surprise planned for us, a little family reunion I wanted to organize. It was supposed to be a casual gathering, just some friends and relatives. I was excited, thinking about how we could reconnect with everyone and maybe rekindle some of that old spark. I even bought a bunch of food and decorations. The house was quiet when I got there, which was weird because Lisa usually greeted me at the door with a smile. But the house was too quiet and her purse was sitting on the kitchen table, which I found odd because she usually took it upstairs. I called out her name, expecting her to come rushing down like she normally would, but there was no response. I went to the bedroom and that's when I saw her. She was in our bed, half naked, with someone I never thought I'd see in our house, her brother Jake. Yeah, her brother. The same guy who I hadn't seen in years because he'd been overseas, and who, until recently, I thought was just a distant relative. Turns out they'd reconnected, and I guess they'd been sneaking around behind my back for weeks. I stood there frozen watching her kiss him. Her hand was on his chest and his arms were wrapped around her waist. They looked so comfortable, so intimate, I felt my stomach drop. My mind raced. How long had this been going on? How could she betray me like this? And with her own brother. It was like a bad joke, but it was happening right in front of me. I wanted to scream, to run in and break it up, but I couldn't move. I just stared, trying to process what I was seeing. The shock hit me hard, and I felt like I was drowning in a sea of betrayal and rage. I didn't even think about what I was doing next. My body moved before I could stop it. I kicked the door open and yelled, "What the hell is going on here?" Lisa's eyes widened like she'd been caught stealing something. She scrambled to grab her clothes, her face twisted in a mix of guilt and anger. Jake looked like he'd seen a ghost, his face pale. She started lying immediately, of course. "It's not what it looks like, Jeff," she spat, trying to act innocent. We're just talking, it's nothing serious." But her voice trembled, betraying her. I was furious. I looked at Jake, who was trying to slip out of the room without saying a word. Her words felt like a slap in the face. How many times had she lied to me? How long had this been going on? And with her own brother, of all people. My mind was spinning, and every ounce of trust I had in her evaporated in that moment. The betrayal felt like a punch to the gut. I wanted to scream at her, to tear her apart, but I just stood there, trembling, trying to keep my composure. I knew I had to confront her, but I didn't have the words yet. All I could think about was how my life had just been turned upside down. After that night, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. The image of her and Jake, her brother, kept replaying in my head. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I didn't see this coming. The betrayal was so deep, so raw, that it felt like my heart had been crushed into pieces. I never thought Lisa would do something so sick, so twisted. I always thought she was honest, that she loved me. Turns out I was just blind. The next morning, I decided I needed to confront her again, face to face. I didn't want her to think she could brush this off like some tiny mistake. I wanted the truth, no matter how ugly. When she came downstairs, she was acting like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't just been caught cheating on her own brother and me in our house. Her usual bitchy attitude was on full display. She was snapping at me, dismissive, trying to tell me I was overreacting, that I was imagining things. I didn't buy it. How could I? I told her I saw her with Jake. Her face twisted into a sneer. "Oh, so now you're accusing me of cheating. You're crazy, Jeff." She lied, as usual, denying everything, insisting that I was making it all up or that I was just jealous. She said, "He's just a friend, okay? You're blowing this out of proportion. Maybe you're the one with the problem, not me." I felt my blood boil. How could she be so damn callous? I told her I wasn't stupid, that I'd seen the way she looked at him, the way they touched. She rolled her eyes, dismissed my feelings, and started screaming at me that I was paranoid, that I needed therapy, that I was losing my mind. That moment, I realized I couldn't stay silent anymore. I started packing my things. I told her I was done with her lies, with her bullshit. She kept yelling, calling me names, trying to guilt trip me into staying. But I couldn't do it, not after seeing that. The woman I married, the woman I loved, was sleeping with her own brother. It was all too much. I felt broken, lost, confused. The worst part was knowing it wasn't just a one-time thing. They'd been sneaking around for weeks. I found texts, hidden messages. She tried to hide her phone from me, but I found incriminating messages. I read the things she'd written, how much she enjoyed their secret meetings, how she felt alive with him. I was overwhelmed by a mix of anger, disgust, and heartbreak. I felt betrayed on every level. How could she do this to me, to her family? I kept asking myself whether I was just naive or if she'd always been this manipulative. I felt like a fool for ever trusting her. I sat there, staring at the stuff I'd gathered, knowing I had to make a choice. Stay and forgive, or walk away and never look back. The pain was unbearable, but I knew I couldn't stay in this toxic environment any longer. I took a long, deep breath and decided I'd get out before I completely lost my mind. That's when I called a lawyer and started planning my next move. But what that move would be, I wasn't sure yet. All I knew was I had to get away from her, from this horrible mess she dragged me into. The days that followed felt like living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I was stuck between anger, disbelief, and a deep sadness I couldn't shake. Every time I thought about her with Jake, her own brother, I felt sick. How could she do this? How could she betray her own family so badly? I kept asking myself if I'd missed the signs, if I'd been blind to her manipulations all along. The worst part was realizing that she had lied to me for months, maybe longer, and I'd been too blind to see it. I decided I couldn't just leave without confronting her one last time. I wanted her to know I knew everything, that she couldn't keep lying to my face anymore. So I scheduled a meeting at a nearby coffee shop, somewhere public so she couldn't get too crazy. When she arrived, she looked irritated, annoyed that I was even bothering her. She tried to play the victim, claiming I was overreacting, that I was crazy for accusing her without proof. I didn't even bother arguing at first. I just looked at her and laid out all the evidence I'd collected. The texts, the photos I'd secretly taken, the timeline of her and Jake's secret meetings. She lost her temper then. Shouted that I was a jealous, paranoid bastard, that she was done with this stupid game, and that I should just leave her alone. She called me a bunch of names, said I was controlling, insecure, and that I should be grateful she put up with me. Honestly, hearing her say that just made the rage boil over. I told her she'd messed up everything, our marriage, our family, even her own reputation. She just scoffed and said I was a fool for believing she cared about me. That's when I told her I was done trusting her, done pretending everything was okay. After that, I just walked out. I felt hollow, like I'd lost part of myself. The betrayal cut so deep I didn't know if I'd ever recover. I started packing my stuff, preparing to leave that night. But things took a sudden turn when she called me later that evening, furious and crying. She begged me not to leave, saying she'd do anything to fix things. But I knew better. I knew she was just trying to manipulate me again, playing her typical game of guilt and lies. I told her I wasn't interested in her excuses, that I was done with her bullshit. The truth is, I had no idea what I was going to do next. I was overwhelmed with so many conflicting feelings: anger, heartbreak, betrayal, and even some small part of me still hoping she'd just admit everything and be honest for once. But I knew that wasn't happening. The dam had broken and I couldn't pretend things were okay anymore. I told her I'd be staying at a friend's place for a while, giving myself some space to breathe and think. I wanted to be alone, away from her toxicity, her lies, her bitchy attitude. Honestly, I felt numb. Like a part of me had died. I kept replaying the moments, the surprise reunion plans, her kiss with Jake, her lies, her dismissiveness, and I couldn't believe I'd fallen for someone so dishonest. How did I not see this coming? How did I miss all the red flags? I kept asking myself if I was a fool for loving her so much, for trusting her so blindly. And the worst part, I knew this wasn't just about her cheating. It was about the fact that she had betrayed everything we built together. Our vows, our honesty, our family. I was devastated, but I also knew one thing for sure. I couldn't go back to that life, not after what I'd seen and heard. I needed time to figure out what I really wanted, because right now I felt like I was just surviving, not living. The days after I left her house were some of the loneliest I've ever experienced. I stayed with a friend, trying to process everything that had happened. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her and Jake, her brother, together. That image haunted me. I'd trusted her with my life, and she'd repaid me by sneaking around, lying, and apparently sleeping with her own family. The betrayal was so deep I couldn't even talk about it without feeling like my chest was gonna explode. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs. She had always been bitchy, difficult, but I never thought she'd sink so low. I remembered the small fights, the passive-aggressive comments, the way she'd disappear for hours without telling me where she was going. I thought maybe she was just stressed or overwhelmed, but now I knew better. She'd been hiding this secret life for who knows how long. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I'd been blind. I was so caught up in trying to make things work to keep her happy that I ignored the warning signs. I started digging through her phone, trying to understand her motives, trying to find out how long she'd been lying. That's when I found the messages, screenshots, texts, photos. She was telling him how much she enjoyed their secret meetings, how she felt alive with him, how she'd never felt this way with me. I felt sick reading it. It was like a punch in the gut every time I saw a new message. She'd been planning her betrayal behind my back for weeks. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time, I wanted to do it on my terms. I wanted her to see I wasn't just some naive fool anymore, so I set up a confrontation. Not in some public place this time, but at her apartment. I wanted her to face the consequences of what she'd done. When she opened the door, she looked annoyed, like she'd been expecting me to come crawling back, begging her to fix things. Nope. I was done begging. I told her I knew everything. I laid out the evidence I had, made her look at the screenshots, the photo, the timeline. Her face twisted into a mask of anger and defiance. She tried to deny it again, claiming she didn't do anything wrong, that I was just paranoid. She said, "You're just jealous because I'm better than you. Jake's better than you. You're nothing compared to what we have." That made me so furious I almost lost it. I told her she was a liar, a manipulator, and that I'd never trust her again. I told her she'd destroyed the one good thing I ever had, my marriage, my family. But she just kept insisting she was innocent, that I was just insecure and crazy. I looked her in the eyes and told her she'd crossed every line, that I'd never forgive her, not after what I'd seen, what I'd read. She cried, begged, tried to tell me she loved me, that she'd change, but I knew better. Love doesn't include sleeping with your brother or lying to the person you said you loved. That night I packed my things again and moved out. It wasn't easy. Every piece of furniture, every picture on the wall reminded me of what I'd lost. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. I kept asking myself how I was supposed to go on from this. How do you rebuild trust after someone you loved so much betrays you in the worst way possible? The pain was all-consuming. I felt like I was walking in a fog, trying to find some clarity, some reason to keep going. All I knew was that I couldn't stay with her. Not anymore. Not after she'd shown her true colors. In those first few days alone, I realized something. My feelings were all over the place. I was angry at her, furious at Jake, but mostly I felt heartbroken. Heartbroken because I'd believed in forever, in loyalty, in love. And she had taken all that and flushed it down the drain. I kept asking myself how I could have been so naive. How could I have missed all the clues? The truth is, I didn't want to see what was right in front of me. I wanted to believe she loved me, that she was faithful. But now I knew better. I'd been played, used, and betrayed in the worst way. And somehow I had to find a way to pick up the pieces and move forward. The weeks that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and angry, broken days. I was angry at her, furious that she'd done this to me, to our family. I kept replaying everything, the lies, the secret meetings, the kiss with her brother. It felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I had to keep telling myself I deserved better, that I wasn't some fool who let himself get played by a bitchy, manipulative woman. But even with that logic, the pain was still there. gnawing at me every time I thought about what I'd lost. I started seeing a counselor just to help process everything. I told him what I'd found, how I felt betrayed at every level. He told me I was right to feel hurt and angry, but I also needed to focus on myself now, to rebuild my confidence, my sense of self. As much as I wanted to lash out or get revenge, I knew that wouldn't fix anything. That's when I decided I had to do something about her, something that would send a clear message, something that would make her regret ever crossing me. I didn't want to just walk away with a broken heart. I wanted her to understand the full extent of her betrayal, so I devised a plan, something cold, calculated, and precise. I knew she was still trying to contact me, still hoping I'd come back or forgive her. But I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. Instead, I planned to expose her to her entire family, to her friends, and to her boss if I had to. I wanted her to feel what it was like to be humiliated, to be publicly betrayed. My plan wasn't about revenge just to hurt her. It was about justice, making her realize she couldn't keep lying and manipulating without consequences. I gathered all the evidence. I had the texts, the photos, the recordings I'd secretly made when she thought I wasn't paying attention. I contacted a lawyer, got some legal advice, and prepared to make everything public at the right moment. I knew it would cause chaos, ruin her reputation, and maybe even separate her from her family, but honestly, I didn't care anymore. She destroyed everything I had, and I wanted her to feel the destruction she'd caused. But I also knew I had to be careful. I didn't want to just burn her completely. I wanted her to understand that her actions had consequences. I set up a meeting with her under the guise of wanting to talk. When she showed up, I laid everything out in front of her, proof of her lies, her betrayal, her cheating with her brother. I told her I was done with her games, that I was going to show everyone what kind of person she really was. Her face went pale and she started crying, begging me not to do it. She said she'd do anything to fix things, but I knew that was just more manipulation. That moment was one of the hardest in my life. Seeing her broken, desperate, knowing I was about to expose her to the world, it was a mix of satisfaction and guilt. I hated her, yes, but I also felt a deep sadness for what she'd become. I looked her in the eyes and told her this was her last chance. Either she came clean and took responsibility, or I would make sure everyone knew about her disgusting secrets. She finally broke down and admitted everything. Her lies, her affair with Jake, the whole twisted mess. It was like a dam breaking and I could finally breathe again. The aftermath was exactly what I expected: chaos. Her family was furious, her friends were disgusted, and her reputation took a huge hit. She lost her job, her social circle, everything that mattered to her. Watching her suffer was a bitter victory, but honestly, I didn't feel much. All I felt was relief that I no longer had to live with her lies. I moved out of the city, started over somewhere new. It was painful, but I knew I couldn't stay near her. Not after what she'd done. I had to rebuild my life from scratch, but I was determined to do it better, smarter, and stronger. That betrayal had broken me, but I was going to heal, eventually. It's been months since I walked away from her, from that nightmare of a marriage. Honestly, I still think about it every day, what I lost, what I saw, what I had to go through. But at the same time, I feel a strange sense of relief. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad I found out the way I did. If I hadn't, I might have stayed blind, kept pretending everything was perfect. Now I know the truth. And the truth, as brutal as it is, set me free. Living through that betrayal taught me a lot about trust, about seeing the signs early, and most of all, about valuing myself enough to walk away when something isn't right. I learned that toxic people, no matter how bitchy or manipulative, are not worth losing your sanity or your dignity over. She thought she could get away with everything, that she'd never get caught, but she underestimated how far I was willing to go to protect myself and my integrity. I've started rebuilding my life. I've got a new job, new friends, and I'm finally focusing on my own happiness. I don't dwell on the past anymore. Sure, I get angry sometimes, still feel that sting of betrayal, but I've realized that holding onto that anger only keeps me tied to her. I've let it go in my own way. I've learned to forgive myself for trusting her so blindly, and I've learned not to let hatred consume me. Instead, I choose to move forward, smarter and more cautious. Looking back, I truly believe I did what I had to do. Exposing her was the only way to get closure. It hurt her, yes, but it also set me free. I don't regret it. I think everyone deserves to know the truth, especially when someone's been so dishonest and manipulative. I hope she's learned from this, though I doubt it. Some people never change, and she's clearly one of them. To anyone reading this who might be dealing with similar pain, trust me, it gets better. It's going to hurt like hell at first, but time is a healer. Cut out the toxic people in your life, no matter how much it hurts. Focus on yourself, rebuild what's broken. Don't be afraid to fight for your peace, because at the end of the day, your happiness and sanity are what matter most. I'm still healing, still learning, but I'm finally free. And honestly, that's enough for now.